everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Sword and Strategy Podcast. As always, I'm Paul Pierce here with Josh Holmes as we continue our conversation on conflict management.
Yes, sir. So last time we talked about, excuse me. Last time we talked about.
That's unprofessional, sir. You should be
Sorry,
ready.
excuse me. Last time we talked about the don'ts of conflict management. And this time we're going to talk about the do's. So let's just recap from last week, Paul, if we can.
That's a tall order, my friend. That's a tall order.
It is, unlike myself. So we have don't avoid the problem, meaning address it as soon as it comes about, as long as you can stay calm. Don't take sides. Don't escalate. Don't assume intent. Don't punish honesty. Those are pretty much
Did we talk about all those last time? I think we did. Did we not? Maybe.
The thing was, we didn't really break them down. We kind of talked about them in character.
Oh, cool. All right.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. You got me a little lost there, but that's okay. What are we talking about today, though, Josh?
So today we're going to talk about the do's. And in the do's, we'll just start with number one. Do stay calm and neutral.
Calm and neutral. Okay, how do you do that, Josh? What does that look like?
That looks like this. I don't know. That kind of looks condescending. That does have a condescending tone.
It looks like Grumpy Cat.
Grumpy Cat? So staying calm and neutral means you don't want to really show a whole lot with your facial expressions as far as, being overly angry, like being mad, a scowl, or RBF. I won't say it out loud. You want to make sure that, you have a listening tone to your demeanor. You want to make sure that you're remaining unbiased. If it's between people, if it's towards a certain individual, you want to make sure, or a certain group of people, you want to make sure that you're staying away from any kind of judgment or already having some kind of confliction with the incident. You want to kind of push it all out. Be calm and neutral.
It makes me think of how many times we're put in situations where there's some kind of conflict, whether it's between some person and you, or maybe in this situation, since we're talking leadership, it's between two employees, or an employee and a customer, or something to that effect.
Both Cephas and so beefus.
Yeah. But it feels like a lot of times when we get that, when the conflict first arises, it's great to be in a leadership position where you're kind of right there in the middle of it and you see it as it happens. And so then you can handle it. That's typically not how that happens. Usually you hear about it later. And usually it's one party that comes to you and says, so-and-so said this happened.
And we're going to call them the snitch. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. It's not the snitch.
But that's usually what happens. And right. It's a really natural tendency as humans when somebody comes and tells you something, that there's an issue, there's a problem with a customer, that you want to almost take that person's side because they came to you, they told you, and they're so passionate about what happened. Right. You're like, man, that has to be true. Right. You get so many times when customers come up in a retail position, right? They come up and they're angry about something and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. Let me help you. Only to find out it really wasn't that thing at all when you talk to other parties who are eyewitnesses or even the other injured party. So as a manager or as a leader, I think it's really important when conflict does arise, and it will. There's no leadership position out there where conflict doesn't show up in some form or fashion at some point. But it's important that before you really act, right, it is important to stay neutral and be calm about it, but then to kind of investigate the different sides of what's happening. And that will allow you to remain neutral. I think,
right. Yeah. And kind of the golden goose would be a situation like you talked on where you actually are involved in it. Like the leader witnesses the whole thing happen so they can be neutral to the whole thing. But like you said, that's a rarity because typically they're not going to happen in front of you. Or before it escalates, if you have a really good employee at your hand, they're going to come get you immediately for you to address the situation, especially when it's with a customer or something, in that nature. Most of them typically won't try to handle that. They're just, if it escalates, they're immediately like, let me get my manager. And then you're already involved, which is always good. And we know how things, like you said, it's not necessarily that somebody's lying or not telling the truth, which that does happen, but a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding.
Right. It reminds me of a time I was working at an auction. I had this big group of employees.
You know what we need? We need flashback music. Whenever we do a story, we need flashback music.
Yeah, make that in post-production.
I got it. There we go. Now we're back in time.
Oh, I feel like I've been transported, man, to someplace I don't want to be. Anyways, thanks for that, Josh.
You're welcome.
I feel more prepared now to talk about
what I'm here for, really.
I know. You're here for the really bad sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this team, and there was one individual on the team that got on everybody else's ever-loving nerve. This person was in HR every day with a complaint. Every day. And not even joking. Every day I was called down for something or other.
Mm.
And one of the better employees I had at the time got fed up and so started doing stuff mean to her, started picking on her because she was tired of how this was.
Right.
They got into a big argument. I'm not there. I'm in my office. And the one that had been the better employee comes to my office and is like, Paul, you've got to do something about this other employee. She is constant. She's bugging everybody. I'm getting so angry. Just now she got mad at me and we blew up at each other because I started picking on her. And I looked at her and I said, do you realize what you just said?
You actually said
Did you
the
realize
wrong thing out loud.
What you just said? And she looked at me and she goes, there's not much you can do about it, is there? I said, no, go back to work. There's nothing you could do. But it just reminded me of a situation where there was this conflict and I had one side of the story and she happened to just tell me all sides of the story, which doesn't usually happen. It was a very comical moment. We had a good laugh about it, but it's really important to understand that. And you're right, remaining neutral as much as you possibly can through it, unless it's something like crazy egregious,
right?
Unless it's something where there's physical harm to somebody, then you kind of have to act in a little bit different manner. Mm-hmm. But if there's nothing of that, nothing illegal or no physicality to it at all, you really need to understand the situation and remain calm, because people who are under you that look to you as a leader, they're looking to you on how you're going to react, what you're going to do, what you're going to say. And if they go to you and they say, can you believe so-and-so did this? And this is what's happened. And we blew up, and you slam your fist down on the table and go, I can't believe, they would do that. And you get up and you walk off. I don't know. I don't know what that was. Sorry. I was trying to do a sound effect and I'm just as bad as you. So I just will stop that. But you slam your hands on the desk and get up and go take care of it. That's not leadership. That's something else entirely,
No. And, typically when those kind of situations happen where you get the one side of a story, another side of the story, and I'd say 90% of the time for me, it's a so-and-so doesn't like me, or so-and-so said this about me, or so-and-so's doing this. It's never really, to me, it never really goes into the side of your customer interactions aren't like that, I guess is the best way to put that. That's typically going to be an employee-to-employee interaction.
Right. True.
So we can move on to number 2. Do address conflict early. So again, we've done a lot of these in the don'ts anyway, but if there's a situation where you feel like you got to walk away, we've talked about that last time, where you may be so aggravated with the situation, you have to walk away, but it doesn't need to sit for 2 days, even 24 hours, 2 weeks, not to be addressed at all, just because you're so mad and you were like, I'm just not even going to talk to him about it. I'm just going to leave it alone. Right. You've got to address it at some point. You need to address it as quickly as possible. I would say a 24-hour window is probably the most you should ever take on it. And that being because shifts end. They don't come in till the next day. You didn't find out about it till the end, or maybe they were already gone. Maybe they're a part-time employee. Customer issues, they need to be handled immediately. There is no waiting on those, in my opinion, personally. I mean, I've all kinds of stories with customer relations, especially with just bad customer service, and it's brought to your attention usually by the time it gets to you as a leader. Because we talked a lot on employee conflict management last time, but that also involves customers. And if you got a customer that comes to you, typically at that point they're pretty aggravated. So first you're going to have to de-escalate that. And you can't just be like, well, this situation I'm really uncomfortable with. I'm just going to walk away for a second. Give me a few minutes. Obviously you can't do that with a customer, but with employee situations, if you need to step away from it for just a second, maybe even send the employee home would be a good suggestion. If it's something that you feel like it needs to be addressed that way. Those don't always happen, but I would say most of the time you shouldn't sit on it for over 24 hours.
Yeah, I do think there's probably some scenarios where it would take a little bit longer than 24 hours. But for the most part, I think you're right. Especially when you're dealing with a client, you want to nip that in the bud pretty quick. I had a client one time selling warranties years ago. Feels like an eternity ago, and it wasn't that long. That's what that company did to me. Anyways, and we had a dealer that got really angry over a claim that we had not covered. And he called my rep and scream and yell at him. And I happened to be in town. And I could have gotten angry. I could have gotten upset. I could have been like, man, let's just not go talk to that guy. Let's give him a few minutes, or let's give him a few days to cool off and figure his crap out, right? Instead, I went and looked up all the different claims we had taken care of for that guy. And we had ended up paying like, I don't know the number, so I'm making something up here. 100 million. No, I'm just kidding. We ended up spending like 20 grand or 30 grand or 40, somewhere in the above 20 grand that we had spent over the last like 6 months on repairs that we had done for his cars, for his customers, that he didn't know about it because we don't call him and say, hey, guess what, man? We just paid this. You should be really proud of us. That's what our job is. And instead, my employee was like, I don't know. This guy's really angry. Like, maybe we should. And I said, no, let's go over, talk to him. And I brought a whole sheet, brought a whole kind of pack of all the stuff we had done when we sat down. He's like, you guys won't do this. And I turned it around and I was very calm, very neutral, but I showed it to him and I marked off all the different things. It does go back to number one. I was going to make a bathroom joke, but that would have been really inappropriate. So let your mind go where it needs to, because we're on number 2. Anyways, woo! When I'm counting down, and he realized really quick, oh, crap, I'm speaking from knowledge. Oh, crap, number 2. Wow. Oh, this is terrible. Wow. This is bad humor. Sorry.
Hey, Paul, are you a father?
I am. It's surprising I don't say potty when I'm on here or whatever else. So anyways, he looked at it and realized, oh, crap. Haha. I can't keep, I'm a child. I am a child. I realized I spoke out of turn. I said, you guys don't do anything, but look at all the stuff you did do. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden our relationship was great. But if I had let that sit there and let him think his thoughts, we probably could have ruined the customer relationship. And that client probably wouldn't have done business with us because he would have had this mindset that was just misinformed.
Right.
So,
but you did take the time to do some investigation, look up some stuff. And that goes with number 2. And in saying that, so I want to be clear on what I was saying earlier. 24-hour period for you to start addressing the situation.
Sure.
So you said, some of those situations you're not going to solve in 24 hours, but you go ahead and start getting involved in it, start addressing it, start investigating what you need to see, talk with your client. You may have to bring in other parties. It may be such a big deal that you've got to actually talk to other people, witnesses, stuff like that. Especially, harassment claims and stuff like that. You really want to dig in and you want to get to the bread and butter of it. You want to get as many witnesses that may have been involved in the program to see who you need to, basically throw discipline at or talk with or sit down and say, hey, this is not the way we do things, whatever it may be. So you're right. There will be times it's going to take a lot longer. I would say a 24-hour period just to get the thing started. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah. No, you're clear. You're good.
I'm clear?
Way to go.
This house is clear. All right. So let's move on to number 3. Tres.
Okay.
Do listen to understand, not to respond. So you want to make sure you're actively listening. You don't want to make sure you're doing this and just kind of zoning and not paying attention at all because, one, you're not remaining calm or neutral. You've already made up your mind what the problem is and what the solution is. because you may not personally like this person. And let's face it, when you work with lots of people, you may come across people you might not like.
I don't
but
know,
it's
Josh.
true.
I like every person I've ever met. That's a lie. I have not.
It is true. You're not going to like there's so many personalities in the world. You're not going to like every single person. And we all like to color in our coloring book the way we want to color it. And unfortunately, in the coloring book of life, everybody else has got crayons as well. And they may be on the same page you are. So you may not like a certain person, but that doesn't give you the right to make preemptive judgment on somebody when you think they're going to be the problem in a scenario. So you want to make sure you're listening to understand.
Yeah. I'm trying to, no, I'm just kidding. I'm with you fully.
Trying to think of a time.
Trying to think of it. No. That's one of the harder things to do, especially when you're in a position where you know the right answer maybe, or you know, based on the information you're getting, you know where this is going to end and you know what it's going to take. And so it's really natural for that tendency to be, you know, while they're talking, I'm already having this response in my head. And at that point, you have no idea what you're saying or what they're saying. You may not have no idea what you're saying either. Let's hope not. Let's hope you actually know what you're saying. But they may, I don't even know what I was saying. See, I'm talking in circles. I should listen to myself.
It's okay. I'm not listening to you.
I didn't think so either. But it's really easy to just not listen for that. You know, and a lot of times in a situation I've found when somebody's upset, they actually just want to be heard.
That's true too.
It doesn't even necessarily need a resolution. You know, they just want to be heard. We used to get these surveys that we would send out to dealers, and they would fill them out and say they wouldn't do this because they were on the computer,
auto
so
dealers.
They would do this.
Auto dealers,
yes, auto, not the unsavory variety. Automotive dealers, cars. Anyways, so they would fill these surveys out about what they thought about the auction. And they would fill them out for whatever auction they attended. And I was one of the ones that was super lucky, and I got all the escalated ones.
I like that.
So, yeah, it was so much fun. But you would read it and you'd be like, man, this person hates life. Oh my gosh, like they hate everything. Like, I'm pretty sure they hate baby puppies. I'm pretty sure they would kick a rabbit. You know, like you read it and you're like, oh my gosh. And I think that I would read that. And as I'm reading it, I'd kind of prepare myself. Okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? And then I would call them and I would say, hey, this is Paul from corporate. I'm from the corporate office.
Oh, well, hello,
which it was. So I wasn't lying. But I would say, hey, this is from corporate. I got your survey. And I hear you. That's what these were clients. These are customers. I did threaten some guys to be kicked out, but not from those surveys. That's a whole nother topic. But I would tell them and I would address their issue. Oh, hey, you wrote because the bathroom had toilet paper on the floor. Or you wrote because my favorite was we ran out of popcorn and you didn't get any. And you escalated a claim all the way to corporate because you didn't get your popcorn that was free.
See,
you know, stuff like that.
Go ahead.
Anyways, so, but when I called them and I said, hey, I see it, I read it, I hear your problem. Because you called, I'm going to report this to the GM and let him know, and we're going to try to fix this for you. 9 times out of 10, they would backpedal so hard. And I use those others as little kind of funny little things. Most of the time I was upset because something that somebody did or this policy wasn't followed at the auction. It's supposed to help me and you guys use it for harm or something like that. But every time I would address and say, I see your problem. I understand. Here's our solution. They always begged me not to call the GMA. Oh, no, don't do that. I'll be good. I'm good. But more often than not, I would get a response of, I sent this in not even thinking anybody would care. And the fact that you called me and say you read it and you repeated back, so I know you've read it, tells me that your company cares and you heard me. And I'm good. I don't need you to tell anybody else. I just had an issue that time. You're already on it. I'm good. And that was the story for probably 90%, of what I did.
Yeah. And a lot of times people do those surveys thinking that nobody's reading them anyway.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and let's there's a couple of things that you talked about I want to touch on. First of all, people, if you're taking one of those surveys and you're one of those people that just tank everything and you do that everywhere you go, maybe time to self-reflect. I'm gonna call it like it is. Maybe time to self-reflect.
Oh man.
I'm just gonna say maybe the common denominator is there. Anyway, so the other point is surveys are a time that conflict could arise. I mean, that's a good doing any kind of survey with your team, with your company, anything like that. You got some conflict, and that's the best time to say, "Hey, I hear you. It's right here on paper. It's black and white. I can see it." And so let's look at some of these. That is a great opportunity to say, "Hey, I hear what you're saying." I think more companies should utilize survey techniques. There's a ton of them out there. And I think if your company's not willing to do it, even so you work for a giant company, sneak in one on your own if you want to. I mean, it's a great way to kind of gauge where your team's at, where you are as a leader. I mean, yeah, if you've got, you're going to have 10% that are going to fluctuate both ways, in my opinion. You're going to have 10% that are going to tank it just because they are angry with the world and they hate life. And then you're going to have 10% that are like, you're the greatest thing ever, hoping that they'll get a raise out of it.
Oh, yep.
So you really kind of trimming out the fat in the middle. I wish people wouldn't do it that way because it's a lot easier to fix things if you actually know the reality of what's wrong and broken. So I love surveys. I think surveys are great. I think they can be utilized well and they can be utilized wrong.
Sure.
But they are a great way to say, hey, I hear you. Did I say great? I think I said a great way. It's
you know
a great way.
Are you Homestar Runner now?
Homestar 101.
That's what you sounded like.
That shows our age right there, for sure.
Oh, that does show our age.
Sure. Right
all
right.
Let's just move on.
So number 4, do focus on behavior, not personality. This kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about maybe our personality doesn't mesh well with this other employee or somebody that we're managing or leading. And now I'm going to let that reflect my decision and what's going on. So you want to make sure you don't use personality, but you do want to use behavior. So you want to say they missed a deadline or something like that. That's something you would address. That's something, attendance. That's something you would address. These are behaviors that shouldn't be allowed in the workforce. It creates morale issues on your team to allow that one person, even if they're the greatest employee in the world. They're the greatest employee in the world and they have bad behavior. It may be time to cut them loose. I hate to say that, but I don't want anybody to lose their job. I'd rather work with them. But let's say it keeps going on and on and on. That behavior's been addressed. That could kill morale right there.
Yes, it could.
You took a breath. I thought you had something to say. Oh, good.
I'm just pausing, gathering my thoughts. No, I think here's something that I would say kind of with that. You don't want to. You definitely want to look at the behavior and not necessarily the personality. And I'm fully with you. At the same time, though, I think it's important as leaders to get to know your people and their personalities, which will help explain what their behavior is.
Crucial.
Right? The more you understand the personality and what makes your people tick and how they operate will help you better understand when there is conflict and what they're going through, or they're changing their behavior. It helps you to more easily identify what those pain points may have been, knowing their character, knowing their personality. We take these personality tests that there's 300 million jillion of these things out there. Some people are lions and some people are seals and some people are grasshoppers and some people are donkeys, and there are all these sorts of things.
We all know the donkeys.
We all know the donkeys. And some people are red, and you're like, "That's what does that mean? You're
angry,
red. Yeah, you're angry. You're an angry elf." But so some of them are like that, and there's some that are really good, and some that I've thought, "Wow, what a hokey gimmick." And there was one in particular that I did that I absolutely loved, and when I got the results back, I'm like reading this novel of stuff, and it gave me results on my own personality and my management style. And as I'm reading it, I almost got skeeved out. Like, is there a camera watching my every move? Because this is like reading my life story. It was so good. It was just so accurate, so good. I even had my wife read it, and she was like, "Who you been talking to? Who'd they interview?" Because it was just that accurate. And what I learned through that was it helped me identify which each personality type was and how you could really tell that in people. And it changed not only my interactions with them, because I would come at them in a different way. But then I also knew what to look for when they were stressed or things weren't working out the way they wanted to, because their behavior would change in a pretty dramatic way from what was happening.
Right.
And then I knew how to get them back on course.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't spend time with the person and getting to know who they were and getting to know what their personality was. So as a leader, you're not called to just sit at a desk and have your feet propped up and have all your minions do your bidding. Right. That's a boss. That's just be honest. That's 100%. But you're called there to actually know your people, know the people that are working. I don't even like to say working under you, but really working with you. Mm-hmm. As a leader, you're working with your people, and getting to know what makes them tick and all that stuff I said before will help you understand their behavior and help you understand that when a conflict does arise, how to handle them with that.
Right.
You know?
And how much better is it in a world where you can help your team understand conflict? And even just because you're the leader doesn't mean you're the only one that has to learn how to do it. It's so much better to teach your team how to deal with their own conflict, because peer-to-peer things, that doesn't need to be even brought to management's attention, in my opinion. Y'all grown folks. You need to take care of your problems. That's just the way it is. But it doesn't mean that you can't talk to somebody, like you can't talk to your leader, about these things. But if you don't like the person you're working with, that's just life. I mean, we don't get to move seats like we did in high school. Or actually, when I was in high school, you can do that. But now I know if you don't like Smithy over here, then I'm going to move you over here by Fanny.
Dude, I'm sorry. I'm sure there's a Fanny out there. Or anyways. So I think I'm sorry, I have to say this because you said we're not like kids anymore. And that's something I tell every employee. Like, we're here, you're an adult, I'm an adult. Let's be adults. Let's figure some stuff out. But when you talked about moving seats, I have to say real quick, when I was in college, I was in class, there was 4 rows of people. And she thought she hated all the talking and everybody sitting next to each other. And this is terrible. You shouldn't do this. And so she took the 2 middle rows and switched them, and then took the 2 outer rows and switched them and said, now we're better. And all it was a mirror of the same dang thing that we did. And everybody just kept carrying on. So sometimes moving seats doesn't even work,
Yeah.
That was a really random story, but I still remember that day vividly. It was hilarious.
But it's true, though. Typically in the workplace, you don't get that luxury of, well, you can't work good over here, then I'm going to move you over here to the place you're already at because it's the only place we got. When you're hired to do a job, you do a job. We're just not all going to get along. Anyway.
Right.
Next, number 5, do ask open-ended questions. So if you're not familiar with open-ended questions pertain to any question that they can't answer with yes or no, essentially. What are you doing? You can't say yes. I mean, you can.
Yeah, have you met my kids? Hey, what are you doing? Yes. Wait, that didn't answer me. Or the worst is when you tell somebody, hey, I need you to, can you either do this or this? And you go, yes. And they go, wait, which one are you going to do? I just said yes. Like, yeah.
So you want to make sure you're asking open-ended questions. Like, why you're late? Why are you late? Is not a yes or no question. Why did you do this opposite of what I told you to? Is not a yes or no question. If they answer yes or no to an open-ended question, then y'all need to have a conversation about intelligence. Just saying. Or how to communicate in public.
I would suggest, though, if that happens, don't tell your employee, hey, we need to really talk about your intelligence right now.
Is that not the way to address that? Did I address that wrong? I'm sorry.
I think that's not being neutral. I think you're saying something there,
You probably are. So if they are responding with yes or no, which they're probably not going to, we're just being facetious. But typically you want to go with any kind of situation like this when you're talking with your employee about something that's happened, or you're talking with a customer about something that's happened, use open-ended questions. Don't use anything that you can just answer yes or no, because you're getting nothing out of that story. You're getting no involvement. You're getting no meat in the potatoes. So I'm hungry.
I am too.
We're good on that? All right. So didn't get a lot out of that one. That's cool. All right. We got 2 more. So we got to keep rolling here, people. If you're already bailing out on us, I'm sorry. Number 6, do seek common ground. I'm kind of iffy on this one. I mean, yeah, you want to get to some kind of conclusion, but I don't think there's always going to be common ground. There's going to be some situations where it's just, unfortunately, in the real world, it's just going to be this is our policy. This is the way we have to do it. And maybe that could be the common ground, but there's some employees that just are like, well, I don't agree. Well, why are you working here?
Yeah. Common ground is one of those really nice to have, right? It's the best case scenario with all parties to be on common ground and everybody to function. But you're right. The world doesn't really work that way. It might work itself out like that in some small pockets here and there or specific situations. But not every conflict is going to end with both parties feeling justified or both parties feeling, yeah, everything that I was upset about is now fixed, and everything I'm upset, because naturally it can't happen.
Right.
When it's 2 employees, there's going to be some give and take, and there's going to be, in some situations, more give than take for some people, and vice versa. I would say common ground is something to strive for as much as you can.
Agreed.
But it's not. So if you're out there thinking, man, I need to make sure everybody's appeased in every situation and everybody's singing Kumbaya together and we're all great, that's not necessarily going to happen. That may not even happen most of the time.
I think typically your common ground situation is going to happen with clients, customers, because you're going to try to stretch further, to try to reach that common ground as a leader. But I would think a lot with interactions with employees, with them interacting with each other, not necessarily your interaction, but them interacting with each other, especially the bigger the team, it's going to be really hard to find true common ground. I guess you could say it's common ground to come across the situation where you're like, this is the way it's just going to have to be. I need you to be okay with it. I need you to be okay with it. If you're not okay with it, then we'll talk about where we need to go from there. But this is kind of the common ground scenario. This is the only way it's going to work out. If you don't feel good about that, then we can talk about that differently. But this situation is handled. I think you could kind of reach that. But yeah, I would think typically with those kind of interactions, you're right. You're not going to have common ground. One person's always going to feel slighted in some form or fashion, no matter how far you can spread that scenario. All right. Last but not least.
That's debatable.
You haven't heard of it?
That's debatable. It's still debatable.
It's number 7.
That's a good
for
number,
those
though.
keeping up with math. Document major conversations. I do think that's the most important.
That's pretty important.
Yeah. So a lot of times people make the mistake, management, leadership, they make the mistake of having that conversation multiple times and there being no documentation of you talking to that person.
So true. So true. Like there's so many times you as a leader will get yourself in trouble, or if a conflict continues to arise over and over and over again with a certain individual, let's say, and you don't document it, then it'll continue to arise over and over and over again, right? The more you can document it down, even if it's a phone call, even if somebody calls you and they're upset and they get off, if you just write out an email, you can even write it to yourself, just have some kind of documentation. I just talked to this person, whatever. But when you're dealing with somebody and they're going through an issue, it is so vital to document everything. How you handled the situation, what happened, what the end result was, what you've tasked the people to do to fix things. That's the same as even just somebody not doing their job. Like that's outside of conflict management, somebody that just doesn't do their job. If you write it down and say, here's what you were supposed to do, here's what I'm telling you to do now, and they come back, you give them 2 weeks to do it, and at the end of the 2 weeks, they haven't done any of it. Well, then you can go back to the reports that I gave you this. Why didn't you do it?
Right.
Especially whereas
stick them on a 30-day plan or something. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
no. I was just saying, if you don't do that part, you don't write it down, don't present it to them. All they can say after 2 weeks is, "You never told me anything." I don't know. Hey, Mr. HR, Mrs. HR, they never said anything, and HR goes, "Yep, you're right. I don't see anything in writing. We can't hold you to it." So
you never brought this to my attention. So, and a lot of companies have something in place now. They have I've worked with companies that had a specific, I I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was where you would basically go in and put notes and attach it to that employee's file.
Yeah.
And then you've got, programs where you've got write-up, corrective action forms. Some people call them write-ups, where you would document it yourself, put it in. I'm a big fan of, if it's not a documentation thing, sending an email to myself and tagging that person in and saying, per our conversation, this is what's going down. So that person sees the email, they know, hey, okay, he kept this. And so now I'm not going to be able to slip in that whole, well, you never told me thing. Right. Because unfortunately, you'll run into employees that'll be like, you never said anything. You never told me I was doing wrong. You never said I had to be here on time. Really? Pretty sure they cover that in orientation, but go ahead. Yeah. You do you.
To your point, not every conflict is going to result in a corrective action or a firing or somebody getting in trouble. It could be just a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. It can be a lot of things, but even documenting the things that aren't going to get anybody into trouble, even non-disciplinary things, but documenting it just saves you so much in the end. Because let's say you do have two employees that are upset with each other, and you handle the situation, you document it, but then 2 weeks later they're at it again, right? It can get to a point where it does become a corrective action, mm-hmm. but it wasn't at the time. Documentation is so important. And if there's any HR person listening at all to this, I know they'd be screaming at us right now, belligerently, that documentation, right? Documentation!
Yeah. Because in the HR world, there's nothing worse than receiving that employee into your office and that leader saying, this person hasn't been here for 15 days now. We need to let them go. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, let me look at their file. Oh, wait, you've never wrote them up for attendance. Now we're in a pickle. So to help your HR out with documentation. I like how we say it 3 times.
We do.
But
we're the Sheldon of the HR world from Big Bang Theory. Instead of knocking, we just say documentation.
It is true, though. You've got to, it only, like you said, you're only getting yourself in trouble at the end of the day when you can't do anything with an employee that you're having issues with, because now it just seems like it's the first time you've ever talked to them, when you've talked to them however many times it may be. And if that's the case, you've just caused more problems for yourself. Yeah. When instead you can print out the 4 emails that you've sent out for the 4 times you've talked to this employee, set them down in front of them and say, okay, we've had this conversation several times now. I've definitely gave you the benefit. I've definitely tried to work with you. Now, you can't seem to work well with others. So we're going to go ahead and document this out as an actual, written correction for you to fix this in a certain amount of time.
Doesn't work well with others. That sounds so like kindergarten or elementary, but it happens it happens so often.
It does.
So often. I know that was kind of your last point there, Josh, the Magnificent Seven. But one thing I do want to talk about real quick as we're getting close to the end of this.
No, Paul. There was only 7. Only 7.
You know what? Oh, that's all. Okay, everybody. I guess nothing else. No, I'm just kidding. Something I want to talk about for just a minute as we're closing out this episode is, I think it's important as a leader to conduct yourself when you're dealing with conflict management with as much grace and humility as possible. I think we kind of talked a little bit about it with being neutral. We just didn't say the word grace, but grace is a really powerful word. Mm. It's a really strong word that a lot of people don't get in those situations. So many managers and bosses, and there's so many people out there. I know you can think of scenarios. I can think of scenarios. Literally anybody who's listening to this that's had a job of any kind, or even not, maybe it's even a parent, they don't expect grace. So many managers, bosses, whatever, are real quick to judge. Mm-hmm. They hear a conflict and it's judgment. It's I'm the king or queen of my domain. You're my employee, and I'm going to handle this real quick. And this person's in the wrong, and I'm going to tell them they're in the wrong. Like there's judgment that's attached, and so many managers rule with that kind of iron fist of judgment over employees. And it's amazing what happens to an employee, whether they're good, bad, indifferent, whatever, when you show them grace. When it's a bad situation, there's a issue, And even if they're in the wrong, but you go to that employee, you bring them to the side and you say, hey, right, I know what happened was wrong, but there's always tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It can get worse. No, I'm just kidding. You wouldn't say that. You would say it can get better. Like, now let's put, all we need to do from here is put the next foot forward,
mm-hmm.
and the next foot forward, and the next foot forward. I think showing people grace and mercy and compassion while staying humble is a hard thing to do, but necessary to be a good leader of people.
Yeah, and there was a word in there. I was going to accept your grace and Annie went up on you. Humble.
Yeah.
How about as leaders, we get a little bit more humble about who we are. We're just humans. We're just like everybody else. Just because you get a title doesn't make you any more special than any other person. And it's sad that I got to say stuff like that, but that's the reality. Is there's a lot of leaders out there that get that position and they're like, and
yep,
they start treating people differently. And you can't do that. If you're going to treat people differently, treat them with more kindness. Let's do that. You get a leadership role. Why don't you add a little bit more kindness to your toolbox? Because in those situations, we can be graceful and we can be humble when even if it's somebody that's not going to work out, you can still be a human being and treat people like human beings.
Man, that just hits me, where I think of kindness as almost this lost art in the business world.
In the world, period.
Yeah, in the world, period. If we're talking from like a business or even a leadership, especially business leadership, right? Things are so cutthroat all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How can I get above the next person? What do I need to do to undercut them so I can grow? How can I show that I'm a leader by stepping on other people? Like, I've been a part of companies that were like that,
mm-hmm.
that everybody takes credit for everything else everybody else is doing because they would rather get the acclaim and move up than to celebrate the people who actually did the work. I saw it firsthand. And kindness is just so lost on so many people. But it's amazing when you're leading people and you can show kindness to them, how much more they want to come to work, how much more they want to work with you, how much more they want to produce with you or for you. It's amazing what kindness and grace and all that stuff does for people. And we need more of it in the business place.
Yeah, in the business place, especially in the world altogether. Just a little bit more kindness and just grace, humbleness. Oh, so sad. So that's going to be all for us today. So tune in next week when we talk about something else.
Do you know what we're talking about next week?
I've totally went blank. I'm hoping our producer, she's going to kill me for this, but I'm hoping she knows.
She probably does. By the look on her face, she does not. So
Sweet.
We are winging it.
We're going to close out with... We're going to close out. Next week will be a surprise. Surprise.
Jump out of a birthday cake.
The sad thing was I came up with next week's and I don't even remember. Anyway,
she might. She's about to whisper it.
Oh, she's scrolling.
She's scrolling. She's about to whisper it to me. Oh.
Here it comes.
Oh, we were hitting on it a lot this episode. So we're going to get to even explore it more. And to be honest, it's one of my favorite subjects.
I'm so excited now.
It's Twinkies. No, I'm just kidding. I don't like Twinkies. Those things are gross. Ugh.
Oh, zingers for me, baby.
Dude, those things survived nuclear war. They're gross.
It's because they're so delicious.
No. Yeah, they are not, sir. We are talking about character and integrity next
that is my favorite.
That is one of my
it's
favorite
crazy that I didn't remember that. All right, so join us next week for
what is it, Josh? What are we doing?
Hold on, wait for it.
What is it?
When we talk about leadership, character, and integrity.
Oh, there we go.
I'm excited about that one too. So I also want to leave you with this message. This podcast was approved by 3 out of 4 chickens. And remember, the 4th one gave us bad surveys.
See everybody next week. Oh, you can't start off like that.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, breathe, Josh. Breathe. We're going to get this underway. Not like you're freaking inhaling a small village.
Poor Sokovia.
Oh, no. no. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition. I'm going to restart because my producer's laughing her butt off at me.
You came on a little strong.
Oh, I came on too strong?
Hey, everybody.
I'm Harry Carey. If you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? Yeah, that's what I should start with.